She woke up at 3 in the morning with her heart racing. It wasn't a nightmare. It was something worse. The sudden realization that her whole life was a well-rehearsed lie. The quiet apartment, her husband sleeping beside her, her stable career, her friends who praised her. Everything suddenly seemed like a set for a play she never wanted to act in. She got up, went to the window and stood there, watching the empty city. And then came the question she couldn't silence. What am I doing here? This feeling, this brutal awakening in the middle of a life that should be working, doesn't happen to everyone. Most people manage to sleep peacefully within their routines. They manage to believe in their own choices. They manage to feel that they are in the right place, doing the right thing, living the right life. But not you. You wake up in the middle of the night with a visceral feeling that something is deeply wrong, even when objectively everything is fine. And what's most disturbing, you can't name what's wrong. It's not unhappiness. It's not clinical depression. It's something more subtle and more devastating. It's the realization that you're living someone else's life. Freud called this civilization malaise, that nameless anguish that arises when the human psyche is forced to adapt to structures that do not correspond to its deepest nature. But he was being polite. The truth is more brutal. What you feel is not just malaise. It is revolt. It is your psyche screaming that it has been betrayed, that it has accepted a deal it should never have signed, that it has traded authenticity for social approval, and now the bill has come due. Addictions are how this scream manifests itself in the body. That compulsion you can't control, whether it's alcohol, food, work, sex consumption, or even obsessive thoughts, is not moral weakness. It's a symptom. It's your soul trying to say something your mouth doesn't have the courage to say. Every time you give in to addiction, it's not because you're weak. It's because some part of you still alive deep down refuses to accept complete anesthesia. Addiction is the last form of rebellion of a psyche that has been too tamed. And here's the paradox that no one told you. Addictions don't destroy you because you're flawed. They destroy you because you're too honest to live falsely. Nietzsche said that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. But what about when you don't have a why? When your life is just a sequence of hows, how to pay the bills, how to keep up appearances, how not to disappoint anyone. Addiction becomes the only why left, the only thing that still makes you feel something real, even if it's pain. But there is something even more disturbing hidden behind this compulsion, something that, when you finally see it, completely changes the way you look at yourself and what is happening in your life. The first thing you realize when you finally stop to really look is that nothing was ever enough. Never. You got that job you swore would make you happy, and 3 months later, the feeling of emptiness returned. You found that relationship that seemed like the answer to everything, and soon discovered that the hole inside you was still there, untouched. You bought, traveled, achieved, built, conquered, and always the same feeling returns. Is that all there is? The people around you seem satisfied with so little. They celebrate promotions as if they were definitive victories. They get excited about new cars as if objects could fill their souls. They find peace in predictable routines and call it maturity. And you look at all this and feel a deep, almost shameful strangeness. Because you can't be content. You can't pretend that a comfortable life is enough. You can't stop searching for something you can't even name. This is infinite thirst. And it has nothing to do with ambition or greed. Ambition wants more of the same. More money, more status, more power within the established game. Infinite thirst is different. It doesn't want more. It wants something else. It wants something that isn't in the catalog. It wants a way of existing that doesn't come with an instruction manual. It's a metaphysical hunger. The psyche starving for something the material world doesn't offer. Freud would say that this is the wild id trying to break the chains of the civilized superego. But let's be blunt. What you feel isn't just repressed drive. It's the unconscious refusal to accept a small life. It is your soul refusing to believe that you were born just to work, consume, and die. Every time you feel that inexplicable emptiness, it is not depression. It is lucidity. It is the deepest part of you saying, I didn't come this far for this. And then you try to fill it. You desperately try to fill the void with whatever is available. Alcohol to silence the inner voice. Food to numb the anguish. Compulsive work to have the illusion of purpose. Intense and destructive relationships to feel alive. Unrestrained consumption to have the fantasy that if you gather enough things, you will finally feel complete. But it doesn't work. It never works. Because you're not trying to fill a void. You're trying to silence a calling. Infinite thirst is not a psychological problem. It is an existential symptom. It is proof that some part of you is still awake, has not yet accepted the social narrative that this is just the way it is, still refuses to fall asleep within a programmed life. People who are easily satisfied are not healthier than you. They just have a greater capacity for self-delusion. They manage to believe their own lies. You don't. Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher obsessed with anguish, said that human despair comes in three forms: despair at not having a self, despair at not wanting to be oneself, and despair at desperately wanting to be oneself but not knowing how. Infinite thirst is this third type, the agony of knowing that you are someone but not being able to become that someone within the available structures. It is wanting to be yourself in a world that only offers prefabricated versions of identity. And then comes the guilt. Because you have everything that should make you happy, don't you? You have health, work, relationships, a roof over your head, food on the table. People tell you that you're ungrateful, that you don't know how to appreciate things, that you're looking for problems where there aren't any, and you start to believe that the problem is you, that there's something wrong with your head, that you're sick, broken, defective. But that's not it. You're not defective. You just weren't made to live on the surface. There is an experience that almost everyone who feels this thirst knows well. You are in the middle of a moment that should be perfect. A dinner with friends, a long-awaited trip, a professional achievement, and suddenly out of nowhere, you feel an overwhelming weight in your chest. It's not sadness. It's something more existential. It's the sudden awareness that even surrounded by everything society promises as happiness, you remain fundamentally alone within an experience that makes no sense. People laugh around you and you think, how can they not feel the absurdity of it all? It's like living in a movie where everyone else has memorized the script perfectly, but no one gave you the script. They know when to laugh, when to get emotional, when to pretend that it matters. And you stand there trying to imitate, trying to understand why you can't feel what they feel. It's not cynicism. You would like to be moved by simple things, but your psyche won't accept it. It demands more truth, more depth, more reality. And the world only offers rehearsed versions of emotion. Infinite thirst also makes you vulnerable in dangerous ways. Because when you're desperate to feel something real, you accept anything that promises authenticity, even if it's destructive. That's why you're attracted to extreme experiences, intense and problematic people, situations that any sensible person would avoid. It's not self-sabotage. It's a frantic search for something that pierces the anesthesia of ordinary life. You prefer real pain to false comfort. You prefer authentic chaos to manufactured peace. And there's something even more disturbing. Infinite thirst makes you realize that you never completely belonged anywhere. You've always been the odd one out, the one who asked the wrong questions, who wasn't excited about the right things, who looked at people and thought, do they really believe what they're saying? This lack of belonging is no accident. It's a symptom. You don't belong because you were made for something else. You just don't know what that is yet. Infinite thirst is a marker. It is biological evidence that you have the capacity for depth. Not everyone can feel this hunger. Most people have been conditioned since childhood to seek satisfaction in the right things: family, career, security. They learn to call this happiness and sleep peacefully. But your psyche never completely bought into this story. You always knew, even without knowing that you knew, that there is something beyond. And now you pay the price for this lucidity, a chronic dissatisfaction that won't let you rest. But here's what no one tells you. This hunger has a purpose. It exists for a reason. It's not there to torture you. It's there to keep you from falling asleep. Every time you feel that emptiness coming back, it's not a failure. It's an alarm. It's life nudging you, reminding you. You haven't found it yet. Keep looking. Don't stop. Don't settle. Don't accept. Don't sleep. Infinite thirst is not your enemy. It is your most brutal guide. And it is not alone. Because when you can't fill the emptiness with the things of the world, your psyche starts to do something else. Something that people around you interpret as isolation, but which is actually the opposite. You've begun to realize that you need to be alone. Not occasionally, constantly. Not because you hate people, but because their presence exhausts you in a way you can't explain. You go to a party, talk, laugh, seem integrated. But when you get home, you feel like you've run a marathon. It's not physical exhaustion. It's something deeper, as if being around other people drains something essential from you. And so you start canceling. You make excuses. You say you're busy, tired, sick. Little by little, you build a life where you can go days, sometimes weeks, without deep human interaction. And the strangest thing, you feel better this way. Not happy, but more like yourself. As if you could finally breathe without having to perform an acceptable version of yourself for others to consume. People don't understand. They think you're depressed, that you need to get out more, that you're isolating yourself in an unhealthy way. Psychologists call this avoidant behavior and treat it as a symptom of social anxiety. But that's not it. You're not afraid of people. You're afraid of losing yourself among them. Because here's what happens when you interact. You adapt, automatically. Without even realizing it, you adjust your tone of voice, your opinions, your facial expressions to fit in with what is expected. You make jokes you don't find funny. You agree with things you don't believe in. You suppress genuine reactions so you don't seem strange. And after hours of doing this, you come home and no longer know who you are. You've spent so much energy being palatable to others that you've forgotten what it's like to be yourself. Voluntary exile is not escape. It's self-preservation. It's your psyche saying, I can't keep diluting myself to fit in with others. I need space to remember who I am. Nietzsche had a brutal quote about this. In solitude, the solitary devours himself. In the crowd devours him. Now choose. You chose to be devoured by yourself. It's less comfortable, but at least it's honest. And when you're finally alone, truly alone, with no obligation to be anything to anyone, something changes. The silence, which should be empty, becomes habitable. You begin to hear things that social noise drowned out. Deeper thoughts, insights that don't fit into casual conversation, questions that scare you. It is in this silence that you find the voice that matters, your own, uncontaminated by the expectations of others. But there is a price. Voluntary exile creates a distance between you and the world that is difficult to reverse. You begin to see human interactions as a strange game of masks and performances. You see people feigning intimacy through empty conversations about the weather, TV shows, gossip. You see the cordial falsehood, the social theater, the polite dance of collective hypocrisy, and you can no longer participate with innocence. You know too much. You've seen too much. You can no longer pretend that this is real connection. There is a specific moment that marks the transition to voluntary exile. It is when you realize that you are more alone among people than when you are literally alone. It's sitting at a table full of people, listening to conversations about topics that mean nothing and feeling a loneliness so deep that it physically hurts. And then you understand. The problem isn't the absence of people. It's the presence of empty connections. It's being surrounded by superficiality and realizing that it's worse than silence. Freud would say that you are sublimating, transforming social impulses into energy for internal work. And maybe he's right, but there's something else going on. In solitude, you're not just avoiding people. You're cultivating something. You're creating an internal space where you can hear signals that only appear in silence. It's like tuning into a frequency that is only audible when you turn off all the others. And those signals tell you things. They tell you that you're not here to live the life you were taught to live. That the version of you that people know is not the real version. That there is a deeper layer waiting to emerge, but it will never emerge while you're too busy being nice, pleasant, palatable. Exile is where you go to die as an imposter and be reborn as who you really are. But people don't forgive that. They interpret your absence as rejection. They think you're better than them, that you're being arrogant, distant, selfish. You try to explain and realize that there is no shared language for what you're feeling. How do you tell someone, I can no longer pretend to be interested in conversations that don't touch on anything real? How do you explain that your loneliness is not sadness but sanity? Voluntary exile also reveals something disturbing. You realize that most people don't want real connection. They want comfort. They want validation. They want someone to listen to their complaints and say that everything is fine. But real connection, the kind that touches on uncomfortable truths, that questions, that goes deeper, they avoid that. It's too heavy. It requires too much vulnerability. So you learn. Honest loneliness is better than performative company. There's something even more disconcerting. In loneliness, you begin to truly know yourself. And you don't always like what you find. You discover old anger that you were repressing. You notice destructive patterns that you repeated without realizing it. You see your own contradictions without being able to blame anyone else for them. Voluntary exile forces you to face your own shadow. That part of you that you preferred to keep hidden while you were busy interacting with others. That's why so many people flee from solitude. Not because they need company, but because they can't stand their own presence. They fill their schedules, turn on the TV, compulsively check their cell phones, anything to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But you chose to face it. You chose to sit with the discomfort, with the shadow, with the truths you would rather ignore. And that transforms you. And at the bottom of this exile, you find something that people in the social theater never find. The feeling of being whole. Not happy, not comfortable, but whole. As if all the parts of you that you needed to fragment to fit in with others could finally exist in the same space at the same time. And then you understand. Exile is not punishment. It is refuge. It is the place where you can stop lying. Loneliness also teaches you something fundamental. You discover that you can survive on your own. That you don't need external approval to exist. That your identity doesn't depend on how others see you. This discovery is terrifying and liberating at the same time. Because when you realize that you don't need others to validate your existence, the whole social game loses its power over you. You stop doing things to impress. You stop censoring your thoughts to please others. You stop living for the mirror of others. But this refuge has a ruthless guardian. And when you are finally alone with yourself, you realize that you cannot simply be, because there is another compulsion at work, perhaps the most exhausting of all. And then, leaving this silent refuge, you return to the world and realize that you can't just let things happen. There is a compulsion that takes hold of you whenever something goes off the script you have mentally planned. It doesn't matter if it's a work meeting, a family dinner, or even how people arrange the chairs in the room. You feel a physical need to intervene, to adjust, to control. It's not perfectionism. It's something deeper and more exhausting. It's as if you carry a cosmic responsibility for every detail of the universe around you. If something goes wrong, anything, you feel like it's your fault, that you should have predicted it, that you should have acted, that you should have prevented it. Even when it's logically impossible to have control over the situation, part of you doesn't accept that impossibility. People call you controlling. They say you need to relax, trust more, let life flow. And you even try. But a few minutes later, there you are again, checking, double-checking, organizing, anticipating problems that may not even happen. It's exhausting. It's draining. But you just can't stop. Because here's what no one understands. This need for control doesn't come from arrogance or stubbornness. It comes from fear. A primitive, visceral fear that if you let go of the reins for a second, everything will fall apart. And worse, you have evidence that this fear is justified. Because every time you trusted that things would work themselves out, they didn't. Every time you delegated, people failed. Every time you let go, chaos won. So you learned. If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. Or at the very least, supervise every step. Check every detail. Anticipate every problem. Have a plan B, C, and D. Because the world is unpredictable and cruel to those who naively believe that things will simply work out. Freud had a term for this, reactive formation, when unbearable anxiety in the face of chaos turns into a rigid defense of order and control. But let's go beyond theory. What you feel is not simple neurosis. It's the weight of having learned too early that you're alone, that no one is going to save you, that if you don't take care of everything, no one else will. And so you became the person who carries the world on their shoulders, even though the world didn't ask for it. This hyper-responsibility has made you reliable. People know they can count on you, that you won't drop the ball, that you'll make it happen no matter the personal cost. And so you became indispensable. At work, in your family, in your social circle, everyone depends on you. And you hate it, because the more indispensable you become, the more stuck you are in this role of savior, of organizer, of person who can never rest. And there's a cruel irony in all this. The more you try to control, the more out of control you feel inside. Because life cannot be controlled. No matter how many plans you make, how many contingencies you prepare, something you didn't foresee will always come up. And every time that happens, you don't think, it's impossible to foresee everything. You think, I should have foreseen it. The failure is always yours. The mistake is always yours. The responsibility is always yours. There's a specific moment that people like you know well. It's when you're in the middle of a crisis. It could be professional, family, anything. And everyone around you is panicking, paralyzed, not knowing what to do. And you're already 3 steps ahead, organizing solutions, delegating tasks, staying calm. On the outside, you're the leader everyone needs. On the inside, you're screaming, why is it always me? Why can't anyone else do this? But the truth is, you don't know how to live any other way. Trying not to control is like trying not to breathe. It works for a few seconds, but soon you're gasping for breath, desperate, returning to your old ways. Because letting go of control isn't just uncomfortable, it's terrifying. It means admitting that you have no power over the forces that govern your life. It means facing your own powerlessness. And for someone who has built their entire identity on their ability to solve, manage, and control, that is unbearable. There is something even deeper to it. You carry an irrational belief that if you let your guard down for a moment, something terrible will happen. It's almost superstitious, as if your constant vigilance is the only thing preventing total disaster. And so you live under invisible pressure, in a state of permanent alert, where relaxing is interpreted by your psyche as dangerous irresponsibility. This tension manifests itself in the body. You wake up with your jaw locked from grinding your teeth so much during sleep. Your back hurts because your muscles never fully relax. You have frequent headaches, digestive problems, insomnia. Your body is telling you what your mind refuses to accept. You can't control everything. But you ignore these signs and carry on, because stopping seems impossible. What you don't realize is that this compulsion is training you. Every situation you manage, every crisis you resolve, every project you save, all of this is developing in you a rare ability to bear the weight without breaking. Ordinary people collapse under pressure. You have learned to function under it. to think under stress, to act when others freeze. This is not natural talent, it is muscle. And you built that muscle by carrying burdens that weren't yours. You also developed something that few have, the ability to see variables that others don't see. Your mind works like a constant radar system, scanning the environment for potential threats, future problems, possible failures. And that makes you exceptionally good at anticipating what's to come. People think you're lucky or intuitive, but that's not it. It's trained vigilance. It's the ability to read subtle signals that go unnoticed by those who haven't been forced to develop this kind of attention. But there is a price. And the price is that you never truly rest. Even when you're on vacation, your mind is working, anticipating problems, planning contingencies, checking that you've left everything organized. Even when you sleep, you dream of to-do lists and disaster scenarios. There is no pause. There is no respite. There is only constant vigilance, a permanent state of alertness, as if you were solely responsible for keeping the universe running. And maybe deep down you are, not the entire universe, but your universe. The people around you survive because you are there. Projects work because you don't let them fail. Life goes on because you hold everything together. It's a responsibility that no one has officially given you, but you carry it anyway, because you can't do anything else, because letting go would be betraying something fundamental in you. There is also a specific loneliness in this role, because no one controls the controller. No one takes care of the one who takes care of everyone. You are always giving support, but rarely receiving it. And when you finally ask for help, people don't know how to respond because you've always been the strong one, the one who solves problems, the one who endures. So they offer superficial, inadequate help, and you end up doing it yourself, confirming your belief that you can only count on yourself. But this hyper-responsibility, this obsessive need to control every variable, has an even deeper root. And when you finally look at that root, you find something that hurts more than any failure or mistake. You always knew that your life was harder than normal. While other people seemed to navigate existence with relative ease, you carried a weight you couldn't name. It wasn't just bad luck, it wasn't just bad circumstances. It was as if life had specifically selected you for a more intense, more constant, more inescapable kind of suffering. Maybe it started in childhood. Maybe you grew up in a home where love was conditional, where attention depended on performance, where you learned early on that the world was not safe. Or maybe your family was normal, but something in you always felt pain more deeply than others. A harsh word that others forgot in minutes hurt you for weeks. A small rejection that others ignored tore you apart inside. And then life continued to teach you through pain. Relationships that broke you, betrayals that scarred you, losses that changed you, illnesses that humiliated you, failures that embarrassed you. And each time you asked yourself, why me? What did I do to deserve this? But the answers never came. Only more pain came. You look at the people around you and realize that they live simpler lives. They have problems, of course, everyone does. But their problems seem manageable, normal, within the statistically expected range. Yours, on the other hand, yours seem disproportionate, as if you had received a larger share of suffering than would be fair for one lifetime. And that creates a specific kind of loneliness. Because when you try to share your pain, people don't understand its magnitude. They offer simplistic solutions to complex problems. They say cliches like everything passes, or it makes you stronger, or God has a plan. And you smile politely, but inside you think, you have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what it's like to carry this. Nietzsche has a quote that haunts people like you. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. But he left out the important part. The process of almost dying repeatedly is torture. Yes, you get stronger, but you also get more tired, more suspicious, more hurt. The strength you gain is not the radiant strength of winners. It's the dark strength of survivors. It's the strength of those who have learned to function while broken. And here's what no one tells you about chronic pain. It changes how you see the world. You stop believing in cosmic justice. You stop hoping that things will get better on their own. You stop trusting that the universe will reward you for being good. You develop a more raw, more realistic, more illusion-free view of the world. And that isolates you even more, because people prefer to live in comforting illusions. There is a transformation that happens when you suffer beyond what seems bearable. At first, you fight the pain. You try to escape it, deny it, numb it. But eventually you realize that the pain isn't going away. It's part of the fabric of your life. And then you stop fighting and start learning. Not because you want to, but because you have no choice. Pain also teaches you empathy of a kind that cannot be learned any other way. It's not that superficial empathy of I'm sorry for what you're going through. It's a visceral cellular empathy. When someone is suffering, you don't just understand it intellectually, you feel it in your body. You recognize the pain because you've lived it. And that makes you able to be there for people in a way that someone who has never truly suffered simply cannot. But this empathy is also a burden, because you absorb the pain of others as if it were your own. You can't protect yourself. You can't create the healthy distance that therapists recommend. You carry not only your own suffering, but the suffering of everyone who passes by you. And people feel that. They gravitate toward you in difficult times because they know, even without knowing they know, that you will understand, that you won't minimize it, that you will hold their pain without breaking. And so you become an involuntary healer. People tell you things they don't tell anyone else. They unburden themselves of their darkest secrets. They cry on your shoulder, and you hold it all because you've learned to hold it. But no one asks how heavy it is. No one asks where you unload your own pain, because people assume that someone who is strong enough to carry the pain of others doesn't need help with their own. There is a concept in psychoanalysis called repetition compulsion, the tendency to reenact old traumas, unconsciously seeking situations that recreate the original pain in an attempt to finally resolve it. And you do that. You choose partners who hurt you in familiar ways. You get into situations that reactivate old wounds, not because you're a masochist, but because some part of you is still trying to understand, process, transcend that primal pain that marked you. And every time you go through it again, the wound doesn't heal, it deepens, but it also reveals layers. You begin to understand not only that you suffered, but why you suffered in that specific way. You begin to see patterns, to recognize dynamics, to realize that your pain, although unique in its details, is universal in its structure. And that realization is the beginning of something. Because pain, when you finally stop running from it and start looking at it head-on, teaches you things that no book, no class, no guru could ever teach you. It teaches you about human nature, about fragility, about resilience, about the mechanisms people use to survive the unbearable. It teaches you that you are stronger than you imagined and more fragile than you would like to admit, and both can be true at the same time. There is also a brutal lesson that comes with pain. You find out who is really on your side, because in moments of real suffering, the masks come off. The people who promise to always be there disappear when your pain becomes too inconvenient, and the ones who stay, oh, you learn to value them in a way that those who have never suffered cannot understand, because you know viscerally what it means to hold someone at rock bottom. The pedagogy of pain is not kind. It is not fair. It is not something you would voluntarily choose, but it is profoundly transformative, because every time you survive what should destroy you, you expand. Not in the shallow motivational sense of you grow, but in the literal sense that your capacity to contain human experience increases. You become a larger vessel, capable of holding more complexity, more ambiguity, more truth. And then you realize something disturbing. The pain wasn't punishing you. It was preparing you. For what? You don't know yet, but you begin to suspect that people who have never truly suffered cannot do what you will need to do. They lack the depth. They lack the resilience. They don't have the wisdom that only comes from having been broken and put back together repeatedly, until you learn that you can survive whatever comes your way. But pain, as educational as it may be, has a side effect that is perhaps the most difficult of all to bear. Even in the rare moments when the pain gives you a break, you realize you can't rest. There is a constant restlessness inside you, a feeling that you should be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. It's like living with your suitcase always packed, waiting for a departure that never comes, to a destination you can't name. You try to settle down, you accept a stable job, and 3 months later you're looking at job offers in other cities. You start a promising relationship, and soon you're wondering if this is really the right person. You move apartments in search of the perfect place, and as soon as you move, you're already dissatisfied with the new space. It's not that you don't know what you want. It's just that what you want isn't available on the menu of options that life offers. People accuse you of being fickle, of never being satisfied, of always looking for something better. And technically, they're right. But what they don't understand is that you're not looking for something better. You're looking for something real, and nothing you've found so far seems real enough to justify stopping your search. This restlessness is not clinical anxiety, although it sometimes feels like it. It is not fear of commitment, although it sometimes manifests itself that way. It is something more existential. It is your soul refusing to settle for anything other than its true form. The problem is that you haven't figured out what that form is yet. You only know what it isn't. And everything you've tried so far wasn't it. Kierkegaard called this angst, not in the common sense of the word, but in the philosophical sense of a restlessness in the face of freedom and possibility. You are anguished because you know, on some deep level, that your life could be radically different, that there is a version of you that has not yet manifested itself, that you are living a provisional life while you wait for real life to begin. And that wait is torturous, because you don't know how much longer it will last. You don't know exactly what you're waiting for. You don't know if you'll recognize it when it arrives. So you live in constant tension between trying to make your current life work and staying open to the life you sense is coming. This makes you impossible to categorize. You are not irresponsible. You fulfill your commitments, pay your bills, show up when you promise to show up. But you are also not truly committed. There is always a part of you that is on the outside, observing, evaluating, keeping an exit door open. People sense this. They sense that you are there but not completely, present but not fully inhabiting that moment, that place, that life, and you feel guilty about it. Because you look at the people around you and see that they are able to give themselves over. They are able to invest fully in their jobs, their marriages, their routines. They are able to build lives and believe in them. And you build sandcastles knowing that the tide will wash them away. You invest knowing that you will give up. You start knowing that you will not finish. There's a scene that repeats itself in your life. You're at a moment that should be a celebration, a promotion, a birthday, some kind of achievement. And while everyone around you is genuinely happy, you feel a strange emptiness. It's not that you don't appreciate the achievement. It's that it seems irrelevant in the face of the bigger question that consumes you. Is this it? Is this why I'm here? But here's what you don't realize. This restlessness is not a flaw. It's discernment. Your inability to settle down doesn't mean you're problematic. It means you recognize, even if unconsciously, that you haven't found your true place yet. And unlike most people who eventually settle for any place that is comfortable, you refuse to settle. You prefer honest restlessness to false peace. This refusal comes at a cost. You don't accumulate the things that people consider success: stability, wealth, lasting relationships, linear careers. Your life seems more chaotic, more fragmented. You have stories where others have resumes. You have experiences where others have achievements. And society judges you for it. It sees you as immature, lost, incapable of growing up. But you are not lost. You are searching. And there is a fundamental difference between the two. Lost is when you don't know where you want to go. Searching is when you know there is a destination, but you haven't found it yet. And you have the courage, or the curse, to keep searching, even when it would be easier to pretend that any destination will do. Perpetual restlessness also keeps you alive in a way that most people aren't. They've fallen asleep within their routines. They've automated their lives to the point of spending years without really being present. You can't do that. Every day nudges you with the reminder that you're not yet where you should be. It's uncomfortable, but it keeps you from dying before you actually die. There's something peculiar about how you experience time. For most people, time passes linearly. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. For you, time seems suspended. You live in a present that is never fully present because it is always contaminated by the feeling that something is coming. It's like being in an eternal waiting room where your current life is just the intermission before the main show begins. And there are moments, brief, fleeting moments when you feel that you are close. Moments when something clicks, even if only for seconds. A conversation that touches on the real. A job that makes sense. A place that feels familiar in a way you can't explain. And in those moments, the restlessness subsides. You think, this is it. I finally found it. But then the moment passes and you realize that it's not it yet. It was just a glimpse, a clue, a sign that you're heading in the right direction. These glimpses sustain you because they prove that you're not crazy, that there is something you're looking for, and that it's real enough to be felt even if only briefly. And so you carry on. You remain restless. You keep searching. You continue to refuse to settle. Because you know deep down that the alternative, giving up and accepting any life, would be a living death. Restlessness also protects you from a specific danger, the spiritual death that comes with settling. You see it in the people around you, that dull look of those who have given up searching, questioning, wanting more. They have settled for survival and called it wisdom. You refuse to do the same, and that refusal, as much as it hurts, is what keeps your soul alive. But this constant search, this inability to be still, ends up taking you to an even more disturbing place. A place where nothing seems solid anymore, where all truths begin to dissolve. And it is in this place of perpetual restlessness that you develop something that separates you even more from the rest of the world. The inability to accept any truth without questioning it to the core. It is not healthy skepticism. It is not academic critical thinking. It is an almost unhealthy compulsion to doubt absolutely everything, including and especially yourself. You question the news you read even when it comes from reliable sources. You question people's opinions even when they make sense. You question your own decisions, even after you've made them. You question your emotions, wondering if what you feel is real or just a figment of your imagination. You even question your memories, doubting whether things really happened as you remember them or if your brain has rewritten history. People find this exhausting. And it is, but you can't stop. Because some part of you learned, probably too early, that the world is full of lies. That people lie, to you, to themselves, to everyone. That institutions lie. That culture lies. That even your own perceptions can deceive you. And so you develop this constant vigilance, this need to check everything, to take nothing at face value. Freud would talk about structural paranoia, but that would be oversimplifying it. What you have is not an irrational fear of persecution. It is an acute awareness that truth is a fragile construct, constantly manipulated by interests you cannot always identify. You are not suspicious because you are crazy. You are suspicious because you are too lucid. Because you have seen the gears turning. Because you have realized that consensual reality is just that, consensus, not truth. This pathological doubt makes you impossible to manipulate. Advertising does not work on you. Motivational speeches make you roll your eyes. Charismatic leaders make you suspicious. Social movements that everyone supports make you ask, but who benefits from this? You are immune to the narratives that capture most people because your first reaction to any narrative is to question its origin, its function, its blind spots. But this isolates you deeply. Because people don't want to live questioning everything all the time. They need certainties to function. They need to believe in something. And you can't completely believe in anything. You live in a perpetual state of suspension where everything is provisional, everything is questionable, everything can be deconstructed. This attitude makes you seem negative, pessimistic, unbearable. People stop sharing ideas with you because they know you'll dismantle everything. They stop inviting you to discussions because you don't accept any premise without dissecting it. You become the intellectual killjoy, the annoying skeptic, the guy who ruins the party by pointing out that the emperor has no clothes. But here's what they don't understand. You don't question for pleasure. You question because you can't help questioning. It's as if your mind has an inconsistency detector that can't be turned off. Every time someone says something, you automatically look for flaws in the argument, contradictions, hidden assumptions. It's not a choice. It's how you process information now. And this extends to belief systems that should give you comfort. Religion, you see the contradictions, the historical manipulations, the political interests. Science, you see the funding biases, the methodological limitations, the truths that change every decade. Philosophy, you see that each system has its logical flaws, its arbitrary starting points. Nothing survives your scrutiny intact. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes with this. It is the loneliness of not having solid ground to stand on. Other people live in worlds of shared certainties. They know what is right and wrong. They know what to believe. They know which side to choose. And you live in a swampy terrain where nothing is solid, where every truth is conditional, where every certainty is suspect. There are times when you envy religious people, not for their beliefs themselves, but for their ability to have an anchor. They have a book, a doctrine, a set of rules that organizes the chaos of existence. And you only have questions that generate more questions, doubts that multiply like fractals, uncertainties that expand infinitely. Nietzsche experienced this and called it nihilism, the dissolution of all values, the loss of fundamental meaning. But he also understood that this is not the end. It is a passage. It is what happens when you destroy comforting illusions and are temporarily left with nothing. The desert before the promised land. Chaos before the new order. Your pathological doubt also teaches you something crucial, to differentiate between established truth and perceived truth. Most people accept as truth what the majority accepts. You have learned that consensual truth is not necessarily real truth. And that gives you a dangerous freedom. The freedom to think outside all boxes, to question even the fundamentals, to rebuild your own understanding of the world from scratch. But that freedom comes with terror. Because when you question everything, you eventually question your own sanity. You wonder if you're seeing connections that don't exist, if you're being paranoid, if you've lost the ability to simply accept and live. And in those moments, you envy people who can believe, who can have faith, who can sleep peacefully within their certainties. There is also a specific fatigue that comes from this perpetual doubt. It is the fatigue of never being able to rest intellectually, of never being able to simply accept an answer and move on. Every explanation you receive generates 10 new questions. Every answer reveals 10 new layers of complexity. It's like peeling an infinite onion. The more you peel, the more layers appear, and you never reach the core. Pathological doubt also prepares you for something specific. The ability to dismantle systems, not just external systems and political, social, economic, but internal systems as well. The beliefs you inherited about who you are, what you can do, what your place is in the world. You question even your own identity, realizing that it too is a construct, a narrative that can be deconstructed and rewritten. There is a common experience for people like this. You are in a conversation and someone makes a confident statement about anything. Politics, relationships, life. And while everyone agrees and moves on, you sit there, internally dismantling each premise, identifying each fallacy, seeing each inconsistency. But you don't say anything, because you've learned that people don't want their certainties questioned. So you smile and nod, while inside you're screaming, but that doesn't make any sense. And then you reach the most disturbing point of all. You begin to question whether this whole journey, this pain, this restlessness, this questioning, has any purpose. Or whether you're just stuck in a neurotic pattern with no way out, doomed to wander eternally in circles of doubt and dissatisfaction. Is there anything on the other side of all this dissolution? Or is endless questioning just a dead-end loop, a trap of the mind itself? This is where most people give up. This is where people choose any belief, however fragile, and cling to it desperately. Because the alternative, continuing in uncertainty, seems unbearable. But you don't give up. Because some part of you knows that there is something on the other side of all this dissolution. Something that can only be reached by crossing the desert of doubt to the end. And when you finally cross it, when you finally stop fighting against dissolution and surrender completely to it, when you accept that you may never be absolutely sure of anything, something extraordinary happens. You stop looking for external certainty and start building internal confidence. You stop seeking definitive truth and start recognizing your personal truth. And in that moment, you finally touch the core of everything. And then you reach the core. After all the endless thirst, all the exile, all the control, all the pain, all the restlessness, all the doubt, you finally touch the central wound, the one that explains all the others, the one you've spent your whole life trying to avoid looking at directly. It's a specific wound. It's not generic. It's not a vague malaise. It's something precise, painfully familiar, that repeats itself in different forms throughout your entire life. It could be abandonment. It could be rejection. It could be betrayal. It could be invisibility. It could be inadequacy. Whatever it is, it's your wound, the one you carry like a mark, like a signature of your pain. And you've tried everything to heal it. Therapy, self-help books, relationships that promise to complete you, achievements that promise to validate you, addictions that promise to numb you, substances that promise to make you forget, work that promised to give you purpose. Nothing worked. Because you were trying to make the wound disappear. And it doesn't disappear. It never has. It never will. But here's the revelation that changes everything. The wound isn't there to be healed. It's there to be understood. And more than that, it's there to be used. Because there's something you never realized about this pain that defines you. It's not random. It's not punishment. It's not evidence that you're broken or defective. It's actually the map. It's your specific wound that shows you your specific work in the world. Think about it. The people who touch you the most, who understand you the most, who help you the most, they share some version of your wound. You recognize in them the same kind of pain you carry, and they recognize it in you. It is this shared wound that creates real connection, not superficial similarities. You don't connect with people because they like the same things you do. You connect because you bleed the same way. And here's the alchemy. Your ability to help others, to really make a difference in someone's life, is directly linked to the depth of your own wound. You can only heal in others what you yourself carry. You can only guide people through the territory you yourself have already traversed. Your pain is not an obstacle. It is a qualification. Freud understood this when he spoke of the wounded healer, the idea that the best therapists are those who personally know the geography of human suffering. But this goes beyond therapy. It's true for any form of real impact. You don't help people through your perfection. You help through your scars. All this time you thought you needed to overcome your pain to finally start living your real life. But the truth is the opposite. Your real life begins when you stop trying to overcome the pain and start working with it. When you transform the wound from something that defines you negatively into something that empowers you positively. And that transformation doesn't mean the pain goes away. It means it gains function. It ceases to be meaningless suffering and becomes purposeful suffering. You still feel it, but now you know why. You know what it's for. You know that every time that old wound reopens, it's reminding you of your calling, reconnecting you with your vocation. All those addictions you carried with such shame, they were clumsy attempts by your psyche to process pain for which you did not yet have the tools. The compulsion, the restlessness, the control, the doubt, all of these were ways your soul was trying to keep you awake, to keep you from falling asleep in a life that was not yours, to push you toward what you really came here to do. You weren't chosen by some external God. You were chosen by the very structure of your pain. Your specific wound selected you for a specific job. And all that brutal journey, all the thirst, all the isolation, all the pedagogical pain, all the restlessness, all the doubt, was training. It was life preparing you to hold the weight you came to hold. And now that you know this, Now that you finally see the function of your wound, something fundamental changes. The guilt begins to dissolve because you realize that there is nothing wrong with you. There never was. You were just carrying a pain that you hadn't yet learned to translate into medicine. You were going through a process that you hadn't yet completed. The sacred wound also connects you to something greater than yourself. It connects you to everyone who carries similar pain, to everyone who has gone through this before you, to everyone who will go through it. You are not alone in this pain. You are part of a lineage of people who have transformed suffering into wisdom, wounds into strength, pain into healing for others. Something profound happens when you finally accept your wound instead of fighting it. It's as if you stop wasting energy trying to be someone else and can finally direct all that energy toward becoming fully who you are. The wound ceases to be a flaw to be hidden and becomes a characteristic to be integrated. And then you understand, your addictions were never your enemies. They were your most brutal teachers. They forced you to look at what you were avoiding. They kept you uncomfortable enough that you couldn't settle. They reminded you again and again that you were living out of alignment. And now that you've heard the message, now that you've understood the call, they can begin to lose their power over you. Because addiction is what happens when you try to fill a vocational void with material substitutes. When you finally find what you came here to do, when you finally begin to live through your wound instead of in spite of it, the compulsion naturally diminishes. Not because you're controlling yourself better, but because you no longer need it. You found the real thing you were looking for. The question now is no longer why me, it's what for me. What is this specific pain for? Who needs the medicine that only this wound can produce? What is the work that only someone with this specific scar can do? And when you start to answer these questions, when you start to translate your pain into action, something extraordinary happens. You stop feeling like a victim of life and start feeling like a participant in it. The pain continues. The wound remains sensitive, but now you know it's there for a reason. And that knowledge, that simple understanding that your suffering has a function, transforms everything. You spent your whole life thinking there was something wrong with you, that your dissatisfaction was ingratitude, that your loneliness was inadequacy, that your need for control was neurosis, that your pain was punishment, that your restlessness was immaturity, that your doubt was weakness. But now you know the truth. All of it was preparation. You are not broken, you are forged. And there is a fundamental difference between the two. Broken means that something is wrong and needs to be fixed. Forged means that you have been deliberately put through fire to gain properties you would not otherwise have. You have been tempered. And what tempered you was not random cruelty. It was brutal pedagogy. Freedom isn't about making the pain go away. It's about understanding that the pain has meaning, that it's pointing you towards something, that the specific form of your suffering corresponds to the specific form of your purpose. You no longer need to fight yourself. You no longer need to try to fix yourself. You need to start using yourself. Start small. Start by observing. When the compulsion arises, what is it trying to tell you? When restlessness arises, where is it trying to push you? When the wound reopens, who around you is bleeding in the same way and needs your presence? Real life doesn't begin when you get rid of the pain. It begins when you learn to work through it. And if you're wondering where to start here. Stop hiding your wound. Stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. Stop wearing social masks to appear normal. Because your truth, your real pain, your real struggle, your real wound is exactly what someone else needs to see to know they're not alone. Your honest vulnerability is more powerful than any image of perfection you could construct. You weren't chosen by any god. You were chosen by life itself, condemned and blessed at the same time, to carry the weight of consciousness, to endure the pain of lucidity, and to transform your own personal hell into the flame that warms others. Your addictions were never your enemies. They were life's way of keeping you from falling asleep. They were the alarm clock ringing, telling you, wake up, you have work to do, and only you can do this specific work. The wound is the call, the pain is the map, the addiction was the sign. And now that you know this, now that you have finally woken up to what is really happening, the only question that matters is, what are you going to do with it? Now tell me, what is the wound you carry? The one that repeats itself in different forms throughout your life? The one you've tried hardest to hide? The one that most defines who you are? Because that wound is not your problem. It's your calling waiting to be recognized. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a step beyond most people. You watch the videos. You reflect on each idea. Remember, success is a decision. The choice is yours. Count on me and follow the white rabbit.